Hey, how's it going everyone? Raj here, I hope you guys are well. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you all the fragrances that I've worn this week, Monday through to today, which is Sunday. And it's been a good week of fragrances, mainly samples, smaller samples, larger decants. There is one full bottle in here. So I quite like doing that actually, sometimes just focusing on the full bottles that I have, enjoying the stuff that I've actually bought, but also then switching it up and then moving to things that I'm keen to try or am testing, exploring new types of scents, maybe thinking about my next purchase or purchases. And yeah, I like sharing this video with you. I've done many videos in this series, the Scents of the Week series. I'll leave a link down below to the playlist where you can check out all the content in that playlist. And I have a lot of other playlists as well, just in case you're interested. You can look back and watch my multiple videos I've done on my fragrance collection. There are individual houses that I've done multiple reviews on their fragrances, or things like seasonal lists, top 10s. I don't do too many top 10s and all those kinds of videos all the time, but there are definitely many that I've done over the years. So without further ado, let's kick things off with Monday, which seems like, thinking about it now, a very long time ago. I guess it's been a fairly busy week for me actually. So yeah, Monday I went with a vintage fragrance. You may have seen, I've picked up a bunch of miniatures. This isn't a miniature, but in those orders that I've placed, the person who was selling all of this sometimes has thrown in vintage samples, like vintage Fahrenheit. This one is from, I've got two actually. This is from Cacharel, not a house that I know too much about. So I've got that one, and then there's also this one as well, which is the one that I've actually been wearing. So they're all, they're both like dab-ons, which I really hate. I'd much prefer the sprays. This fragrance, not on my radar at all. I know Cacharel because probably their most famous fragrance, I think, is Anise, or I'm not sure how to say it. I think that's a jasmine-based one. This one, Pour L'Homme, was produced in 1981. The perfumer I've actually never heard of is called Gerard Goupy. So yeah, so this is a fragrance that looks like it's still available and it's still being sold. But from what I could see from the modern day's notes, I think it might be a completely different fragrance. If you guys have experience with the vintage and the new one, please do let me know. This one says, it's for the man with a sense of style and adventure, fresh and invigorating. And then it does also mention a few of the notes as well. So in here, it says it's blending spicy mace and the floral notes of ylang, underpinned with sandalwood. So this was a nice fragrance. I liked it. I wouldn't say I absolutely loved it. But what I quite liked about this is that it had a kind of fresh, spicy accord. It had a very watery, green, mossy feel to it as well. But one thing that probably was the most interesting part of this fragrance was the note of ylang ylang, which is I believe it's a tropical floral. I don't have a huge amount of experience. I sometimes do find those florals, when done in kind of like an overdose, can get a little bit too much. But it had a fleshy, fruity, typical kind of like sweet smelling floral accord, but done in a nice measure, mixed in with some of the other woodier, grassy, mossy, watery notes. And it was a nice balance. There were times when I guess coming from the ylang ylang, it reminded me a little bit of some of the Bortnikov fragrances that I've tried, although those ones are a lot more intense and potent. This one is a little bit more toned down. Would I buy this fragrance? Well, if I was to buy it, it would probably be mainly influenced by the fact that it's quite rare, it's a vintage scent. Not so much by the fact that I don't love this fragrance, but I do like it. So I don't know, maybe it's on the to buy list, but lower down. So that was Monday. I'd say a good start to the week. It's always good to try out new fragrances that you've never tried before, which the same can be said for this next fragrance from the house of Acqua di Parma, and this one is Colonia Futura, or Futura, maybe you would say that in like an Italian accent. This is a new release. It came out in 2020, which I think for many people is a year worth forgetting, but I think actually this fragrance is not worth forgetting. I think it is actually quite a nice one. It does say in here combining Italian citrus fruits with woody notes, so bergamot, grapefruit, lemon, there's clary sage, there's lavender, vetiver in the dry down, and apparently this fragrance contains 99% ingredients of natural origin, and I think that's what they were kind of going with this fragrance. I picked this up, or I was given this sample because I made a purchase from Acqua di Parma, not a fragrance, but they do make good candles. So this one is Profumi dell'Orto. I had, actually, is it here? Oh yeah, here it is. I actually, a while ago, no, oh here it is. 1 second guys, this is really terrible, 1 second. Okay, here we go. I can't be bothered editing actually recently, but anyway, this one is Luce di Colonia, which is basically the original Colonia scent in candle form. I went with this one because this is a great candle. It smells really good, very fresh, kind of gives me a garden center kind of feel. There's a tomato leaf accord in here. It's got a kind of clean musk, white floral slight accords in there as well. Great, really fills the room with amazing scent. Colonia Futura, good fragrance, I quite like it. It does start off quite sharp. I don't find there to be enough balance in this fragrance. Like, I wouldn't mind some of the more woodier elements like the vetiver coming through a little bit more, but there is a sharp, sweet, juicy citrus notes right in the opening. It's quite uplifting, it's quite almost like hyper-realistic. I know this says it contains 99% natural ingredients, but it almost feels like they've added in synthetics to just boost this feel of being in nature. Like, it does smell actually very, very natural as well, but kind of like a little bit too natural, but it is a beautiful fragrance, and it's done in a very refined way that Acqua di Parma do. It's quite a classic kind of structure really with this fragrance. I wouldn't mind wearing it a little bit more actually. It does come, the sort of lavender notes come through a little bit more, which add a bit of a herbal sweetness. At times it reminded me a little bit of Caron's Third Man, but not quite as good as that one. But I think this is a pretty good fragrance. I quite like it. Interestingly, looking at the note breakdown, it does say oak moss extract, so obviously you're very restricted with how much actual oak moss you can use, but anyway. All right, so going on to Wednesday, and another fresh fragrance. We've had a lot of good weather this week in the UK, or certainly here in London. And on Wednesday, I went with a really, really beautiful fragrance. This is from the house of Parfum d'Empire, so fragrances of the Empire, perfumes of the Empire. Released in 2011. This one is called Azemour Les Orangers, and was created by the founder, Marc-Antoine Corticiato. I think hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. Before I get into the fragrance, I just wanted to show you this little sample kit that was actually sent to me quite a long time ago, so I really should have like been mentioning these fragrances before, but you know, that's how these things go sometimes. This is from Sommelier de Parfum, or du Parfum, and they are a company based out in France. They reached out to me saying, look, we want to send you some samples, totally your choice. They're all niche fragrances. You choose which samples you want. And I guess they were looking for a kind of a shout out, and I was happy to do that actually. I am happy to do that because really good service, good selection of fragrances. I like the fact that you can put together a selection of 5 and you get 1 for free actually. And what I'll do is that I'll leave a link down below to the website. It is actually an affiliate link, so if you do make any purchases, I do get a small percentage. But there is also a discount code or a rebate code, which again I'll leave down below. It's basically Raj5. And how it works is that if you were to buy a sample kit of 5 fragrances, which costs £20 or dollars or euros, you get a rebate code to use against future purchases, but you get an additional £5 or dollars or euros with my code. I'm going to do a video where I talk about all of these fragrances maybe next week, but let's talk about Azemour Les Orangers. This is a really, really beautiful fragrance, I have to say. It's an orange-based fragrance, but it has a lot more depth. This isn't like Orange Sanguine by Atelier Cologne, which is like orange juice. This takes the entire tree, the orange tree. It takes the orange, the rind, that zestiness, that sharpness, the bitterness from the orange. It takes some of the juice, a bit of the pulp, and it's like an orange juice with bits. But then also it uses a lot of the notes from like the twigs, like petitgrain as well. It has a little bit of a woody, it goes in a kind of woody, musky direction as the fragrance progresses, and you do pick up on a little bit of spicy notes in there, which is quite nice. I quite like that. Done in a nice balance, not in the way that maybe a something like Jean-Claude Helena would create with that cumin and orange, but there is a hint of that. And actually I much prefer this type of fragrance to like a Bigarade Concentré by Frédéric Malle, or what else? What's the one by Hermès? I'm forgetting. Eau d'Hermès or Cologne Vert. I'm completely forgetting the names. But yeah, it doesn't go in that kind of spicy orange direction, but so refreshing, so realistic. It lasts a long time. I think this would be a great fragrance in the warmer weather, and it was quite warm on Wednesday. So I really enjoyed wearing this fragrance. I went through the sample pretty quickly. These samples are, I believe, are the official samples that are, I guess, sent to them by the brand, and then you essentially buy them. Okay, so going on to Thursday, this is a classic. This is from Pasha. This is from Cartier. This one is called Pasha de Cartier. Released in 1992. Jacques Cavalier is the perfumer. I've mentioned this fragrance a few times on my channel. I've done a comparison between this one and the new one, the Parfum version. And so yeah, check that out if you haven't done so. This is really great. I think this is such a perfect balance between that kind of mass appeal designer fragrance, but enough depth and quality to keep me interested, which I really appreciate. A bit woody, a bit spicy, a little bit fruity, which are very kind of general terms, but this isn't like a review. It does have a kind of like expensive deodorant kind of scent there, which might be off-putting to some people, but I don't mind that actually in this. It doesn't go too much in that shower jelly blue vibe, so that's good. It does have a spiciness to it, spiciness in here, and I feel actually with this fragrance there are definitely similarities to Declaration, which is a fragrance I'm not massively keen on. I know it is very popular, but that spicy woodiness, but slightly more toned down, mixed in with a lot more aromatic and mossy kind of notes. This is a fantastic fragrance. This particular one is I guess the version you would buy today. I haven't tried the vintage. If you guys have experience with the vintage and you think it's worth seeking that version out instead of the new one, let me know, but modern version is pretty good for me. Okay, going on to Friday from the house of Boucheron, released in 1991. Actually, there are 3 perfumers credited to this one, which I just realized I didn't write down. Anyway, from Boucheron, this one is Pour Homme, the Eau de Toilette. I've used this a lot. I bought this when it was a full, it wasn't a partially used bottle, and I must have bought this maybe, potentially like this time last year, I think. This is probably the quickest I've used up a fragrance in such a basically a small amount of time, given that I'm a fragrance enthusiast and I have multiple bottles. The reason I really like this one, and I believe this is a more older style design. I think the new one has like all these gold sort of rims or bars going down, but I have tried the modern version. I think it is really nice. What I love about this fragrance is that it's not the most refined scent. It's not the most, there are better examples. You know, I mentioned Acqua di Parma, Colonia Intensa, something like that would be probably a better version of this. but it's just so easy to wear. It's very classy. It performs quite well on my skin and is really affordable. There's a sharp citrus powdery accord in here. It doesn't really deviate too much really from that. It does go in a kind of like a generic woods kind of dry down. It's a bit spicy, it's fresh, it's kind of uplifting, and as I said, it's easy to wear. I like wearing it to work if I'm going into the office. It has a professional feel to it, and yeah, I'm quite keen to try the Eau de Parfum version to see what the differences are. Really great, really enjoyed this one from Boucheron. Moving on to yesterday, and another classic actually. This is from Versace, a fragrance that I'm getting into a lot more actually. I think I'm warming up to this one. Released in 1984, perfumer is Roger Pellegrino. This one is Versace L'Homme. I say warming up in a kind of like I'm enjoying it a lot more, but I think maybe the warmer weather might be making me enjoy this fragrance a little bit more. Maybe that's just bringing out some notes on my skin that I wasn't picking up before. I can see myself owning this one. I really like Versace L'Homme now. It's gone from a kind of like on the fence to, yeah, this is really nice. It's got, again, that fresh, citrusy, soapy, aromatic feel, some fizzy lemon notes, aldehydic. Reminds me a little bit of Kouros actually, but not quite as heavy and musky as and kind of animalic as Kouros, but there are definitely some hints to that, or similarities to Kouros. It smells classy. It smells quite Italian actually. That's the kind of feel that I get. A kind of sparkling citrus, muskiness, some white musk in here, but some sweetness in the dry down actually. And as this fragrance dried down on my skin, I don't know if I'm like alone in thinking this or saying this, but I was getting similarities in the dry down to Musc Ravageur by Frederic Malle, but without that clove spiciness and without the kind of that kind of full-bodied experience you get from Musc Ravageur. And actually in the dry down to Versace L'Homme, there is musk, there's vanilla, there's labdanum, there's amber. I think that's quite a few notes that are in Musc Ravageur. So I'm not saying it's the same, but it suddenly came to my mind, and now it's kind of all I can think of in the dry down, just a little bit. They're very, very different fragrances, but yeah. Good stuff, yeah, really good stuff. Again, if you guys are more experienced with vintage fragrances, do you think it's worth seeking out a vintage? Because this is the modern version, and I really like it. So going on to today, Sunday, another warm day in London. Normally, you know, all of these fragrances are fairly, pretty much on, yeah, almost all of them are on the fresh side. I decided to switch it up, go with a heavier fragrance, an oud-based fragrance from Penhaligon's Trade Roots collection. This one is Oud de Nil. So Nil referring to the Nile River in Egypt. I don't know if this is still around. The trade collection seems to like come and go. It's on the US website, didn't see it on the UK website. Here we have notes of, I mean, there's obviously oud, or their interpretation of oud. I don't think Penhaligon's use authentic oud. Grapefruit and jasmine and orange blossom with oud and rose, and it's actually quite an interesting fragrance. It has that density that a lot of the trade roots has. It has that spiciness, that spicy, woody, quite intense accord. A little bit of that dried fruit I picked up in Levantium, which I think is discontinued. I really like that fragrance. But then actually it goes in quite a nice direction. You get a combination of like a honeyed sweetness coming from the orange blossom and also a bit of jasmine, which adds actually a bit of levity or lightness to this fragrance, because it's very like bass note heavy, I find. There's Gaiac wood in this scent as well, I believe. And it's almost too heavy, and the florals actually pick it up and create a nice contrast. And contrast is key when it comes to well-made perfumery. It might be a little bit too heavy for some people. It was really pushing off my skin in the opening. I've got a little bit on actually. Yeah, it's lasted a decent amount of time. It's not overwhelming. It's kind of like a generic kind of oudy kind of style. Reminded me a little bit of some of the oud notes in Acqua di Parma's oud. And I want to say Indonesian Oud by Xenia, but not as beefy, as medicinal as that. It's quite nice actually. I quite like it. I can't help but feel though with these fragrances like a Middle Eastern house would produce something kind of similar for cheaper. But there you go, guys. That's my week in fragrance. I'd love it if you shared with me your week in fragrance, or maybe a couple of your favorites from the past week, or just your scent of the day, or any comment you wanna mention. I would be great to interact with you guys. Take care. I'll see you on the next one. I am trying to be a bit more consistent with my videos. I actually got demonetized because my views over the last 12 months were down. So not that I do it for the money, but you know, it would be good to get that status back. Yeah, thanks for watching. Take care. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.